Hey, it's Cassie. I did my philosophical analysis on John Dewey, who was an American philosopher and educator who had a strong influence in the reform of education during the progressive era that spanned from the 1890s to the 1920s. John Dewey was born in 1859 in Vermont, and he was one of four sons, and his mother was the daughter of a respectable family while his father was a merchant and businessman, allowing for a stable and comforting upbringing. Dewey eventually married and fathered six children, including one child that was adopted. He experienced several tragic events throughout his life that included the tragic death of his older brother and the death of his two children. Dewey received his early education through the public school system where he excelled as a student, which led to him graduating high school early at the age of 15. In college, Dewey studied philosophy and psychology, and this allowed him to hold a number of teaching and education positions. John Dewey was influential in education, and he helped develop pragmatism, in which it was the belief that human problems should be solved and defined. For Dewey, this meant that although as humans we face problems and situations in which we do not know how to respond, we should adapt to the changing world through generating knowledge through experimentation and experiences. He believed that when children experimented, that it was due to their natural curiosity, interest, their eagerness to explore the environment. And when children experiment and have experiences, it leads to reflective thinking and the use of the scientific process. For younger children, this will encourage them to use inquisitive questions such as why, how. It's just their learning process. Dewey was a firm believer in the process of reflective thinking and thought it was more beneficial to students than sitting there listening to a lecture. He also believed that successful interactions with the environment were the reason that life was sustainable. And Dewey had the idea that he called the complete act of thought, and this was a process-oriented process that consisted of phases that utilized the scientific method. And in Dewey's eyes, the scientific method should be used for social, political, and economic problems to help solve those. While he was considered a pragmatist, his emphasis on the scientific method gave his philosophy the label of experimentalism. Dewey's experimentalism emphasizes that individuals were members of a society, and education played a prominent role in preparing individuals for the community. Dewey believed that the United States best worked based on a grassroots democracy and a sense of community that developed through the three stages of common sharing, communication, and community. All individuals were critical to the makeup of a community, regardless of their race, gender, and ethnicity. And he was an advocate for a democratic society where the freedom of experimentation and inquiry was free from being jeopardized, and democracy was a way of life. Dewey's belief in experiences were incorporated into his belief and practices in the education and school curriculum. He had a strong belief that education should be based on the experiences of a learner to help promote growth and development in students through problem solving and the scientific method. The philosophy of Dewey was put into practice through the laboratory school, in which he thought of as a way he could test and evaluate his studies about school teaching and curriculum that did not focus on books and reciting. In the laboratory school, teachers were allowed to develop innovative curriculums that allowed children to experience real-life situations and to help them develop emotionally, socially, and intellectually. Although John Dewey was raised in church with his family, he did not incorporate that belief or faith into his philosophy of education and often faced criticism over the philosophy possibly being the opposite of a Christian worldview. Despite this, John Dewey's influence can still be seen throughout the modern education system, although it is not always prevalent. Dewey was a principal figure in the progressive era, and he was an advocate of social learning and experience based learning.